The clock on the staff room wall showed exactly 4:30 p.m. when Maya Rodriguez hung up her regular clothes and slipped into the crisp white shirt and black pants that made up her uniform. She had done this same routine hundreds of times over the past 3 years, but today felt different somehow. There was an energy buzzing through the Grandview Hotel that she could feel in the air. Maya tied her long, dark hair back into a neat ponytail and checked her reflection in the small mirror. At 26, she had the kind of face that people trusted instantly. Her warm brown eyes and genuine smile had helped her earn good tips over the years, even on the toughest shifts. But tonight, those tips would matter more than ever. Her 7-year-old daughter Sophia needed new school shoes, and the rent was due in just 5 days. As she walked through the service corridors toward the main ballroom, Maya could hear the unusual commotion. The hotel's housekeeping staff was rushing around with fresh flowers, and the maintenance crew was polishing every surface until it gleamed. The annual charity gala was tonight, and everyone knew this was the biggest event of the year for the Grandview. Maya had worked plenty of fancy parties before, but nothing quite like this. Through the service doors, she caught glimpses of the ballroom being transformed into something magical. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across white tablecloths, and the finest china was being set at each place. The whole room sparkled like something from a fairy tale. But what caught her attention most was the piano. Right there in the corner of the ballroom sat a beautiful black Steinway grand piano, its polished surface reflecting the lights above. Maya stopped walking for just a moment, her heart doing a little skip. She had not seen a piano that beautiful in years. Her supervisor, Mrs. Chen, appeared beside her with a clipboard in hand. Mrs. Chen was a no-nonsense woman who had been running events at the Grandview for over 15 years. She knew how to handle any crisis, and she expected her staff to be just as professional. "Maya, you're assigned to tables 12 through 18 tonight," Mrs. Chen said, not looking up from her checklist. "These are important guests, so remember to smile and be extra attentive. The tips should be good if you do your job right." Maya nodded and took the small notepad that showed her table assignments. Tables 12 through 18 were right near the piano area. She would be serving some of the most wealthy and influential people in the city, all while working just a few feet away from that gorgeous instrument. As the evening began, guests started arriving in expensive cars that pulled up to the hotel's main entrance. Maya watched through the windows as men in perfectly tailored suits and women in elegant gowns made their way into the building. Their jewelry caught the light and their laughter filled the air with confidence and joy. Maya had learned not to feel bitter about the difference between her world and theirs. These people had money and opportunities she could only dream about, but they were still just people. Some were kind, others were rude, and most fell somewhere in between. Her job was to serve them well and earn the money she needed to take care of Sophia. The first guests to sit at her tables were a group of local business owners. Maya approached with her best professional smile and took their drink orders. Champagne, expensive wine, and cocktails with names she had memorized but never tasted herself. As she moved between the bar and her tables, she caught pieces of their conversations about stock markets, vacation homes, and charity donations that were bigger than her yearly salary. But Maya had gotten good at focusing on her work instead of dwelling on things she could not change. She balanced trays with practiced ease, remembered every order without writing anything down, and made sure each guest felt important. This was how she had built a reputation as one of the hotel's most reliable servers. As more guests arrived, the ballroom filled with the sound of conversation and clinking glasses. Maya noticed how these wealthy people moved through the room, greeting each other with air kisses and firm handshakes. They all seemed to know each other, like members of an exclusive club that regular people could never join. Around 7 o'clock, Maya overheard a conversation that made her stomach tighten with worry. 2 women at table 14 were talking about the evening's entertainment, and what they were saying was not good news. "I heard the pianist called in sick just an hour ago," one woman said, shaking her head. "Poor thing has food poisoning and can't possibly perform tonight." The other woman looked shocked. But the whole program was built around having live music during dinner. What will they do now? Maya felt her heart sink as she realized what this meant. the beautiful piano would sit silent all evening, just like a piece of expensive furniture. She had been looking forward to hearing someone play it even while she worked. Music had always been her escape, even when she could only listen to it instead of creating it herself. As she continued serving, Maya tried not to think about the piano or what it represented. But every time she walked past it, memories tried to push their way into her mind. Memories of a different life, when music had been everything to her. When she had spent hours every day at a piano bench, dreaming of a future filled with concerts and applause. That life felt like it belonged to someone else now. Maya Rodriguez, the waitress, had bills to pay and a daughter to raise. Maya Rodriguez, the pianist, was just a ghost from the past, someone who had existed before reality forced her to make hard choices. But tonight, as she moved through the elegant ballroom serving champagne to people who would never have to choose between following their dreams and keeping a roof over their child's head, Maya could not stop stealing glances at that silent piano. Its keys seemed to call to her even though she knew she could never answer. The evening was just beginning and Maya had no idea that everything in her life was about to change. She had no way of knowing that the empty piano bench would soon become the stage for a moment that would transform not just her own future, but touch the hearts of everyone in that room. For now, she was just a waitress doing her job, carrying trays and taking orders, trying to earn enough money to make it through another week. The dreams she had buried were still sleeping safely in the past, where they could not hurt her anymore. But dreams have a way of waking up when you least expect them to. The dinner service was in full swing when Maya noticed the event coordinator rushing around the ballroom with panic written all over her face. Diana Walsh had been planning this charity gala for months and everything had been going perfectly until an hour ago. Now she was trying to figure out how to tell 300 wealthy donors that half of their evening's entertainment had just disappeared. Maya watched Diana approach the microphone at the front of the ballroom. The coordinator's hands were shaking slightly as she adjusted the height and cleared her throat. The conversations around the room slowly died down as people realized an announcement was coming. "Ladies and gentlemen," Diana began, her voice carrying across the elegant space, "I hope you're all enjoying this wonderful evening and the delicious meal our chef has prepared for you." Polite applause filled the room, but Maya could see the worry in Diana's eyes. She knew what was coming next, and her heart went out to the woman who had worked so hard to make this night special. "Unfortunately, I have some disappointing news to share," Diana continued, her smile looking forced now. "Our pianist for this evening has come down with a severe case of food poisoning and will not be able to perform tonight. We sincerely apologize for this unexpected change to our program." A wave of disappointed murmurs swept through the crowd. Maya heard the guests at her tables expressing their frustration. They had paid good money for this event, expecting a full evening of entertainment along with their dinner and charity auction. "The rest of our program will continue as planned," Diana added quickly, trying to maintain her professional composure. "We still have our wonderful auctioneer, and the silent auction items are displayed in the lobby for your viewing pleasure." But Maya could tell that the energy in the room had shifted. The guests were polite enough not to complain loudly, but she could see disappointment on their faces. They had been looking forward to live piano music during their meal, and now they would be eating in relative silence. As Diana stepped away from the microphone, Maya felt something stirring deep in her chest. It was a feeling she had not experienced in years. Like a sleeping part of her soul was slowly waking up. She tried to push it down, to focus on her work, but the feeling only grew stronger. She thought about Sophia, who was probably doing her homework right now at their neighbor's apartment. Maya had worked so hard to build a stable life for her daughter, even if it meant giving up her own dreams. But what if, just for one night, she could be both the responsible mother and the musician she used to be? Maya's hands trembled slightly as she set down a tray of empty glasses. She knew every song that piano could play, remembered the feeling of keys beneath her fingers, the way music could fill a room and touch people's hearts. She had spent 12 years of her life learning to make magic happen at a piano bench. The memories came flooding back despite her efforts to keep them buried. She remembered her first recital at age 8, wearing a white dress that her mother had sewn by hand. She remembered her teacher, Mr. Peterson, who had believed in her talent even when her family could not afford the expensive lessons. She remembered the scholarship letter from the music conservatory and how she had cried when she realized she could not accept it. Maya walked toward the kitchen, needing a moment to collect herself. But as she passed the piano, she stopped and placed her hand gently on its polished surface. The wood was smooth and warm under her palm, and she could almost hear the music that lived inside this beautiful instrument. "Excuse me, are you all right?" Maya turned to find Mrs. Chen standing behind her, concern evident in her voice. Her supervisor had noticed her stopping by the piano, and Maya realized she probably looked strange just standing there touching it. "I'm fine, Mrs. Chen," Maya said quietly. "I was just thinking about the music situation." Mrs. Chen sighed and shook her head. "It's unfortunate, but these things happen. We'll make the best of it. The guests will understand." Maya took a deep breath, knowing she was about to risk everything she had worked for over the past 3 years. But something inside her would not let this moment pass without at least trying. "Mrs. Chen," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I know this might sound crazy, but I can play piano." Her supervisor looked at her with surprise and confusion. In 3 years of working together, Maya had never mentioned anything about music or playing instruments. To Mrs. Chen, Maya was just a reliable waitress who showed up on time and did good work. "You can play piano?" Mrs. Chen repeated, as if she had not heard correctly. Maya nodded, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone in the room could hear it. "I trained for 12 years. I was pretty good, actually. I haven't played in a while, but I think I could do it if you'd let me try." Mrs. Chen stared at her for a long moment, clearly trying to process this unexpected information. Maya could see her supervisor weighing the risks and benefits of letting a waitress attempt to fill in for a professional pianist at such an important event. "Maya, this is a very prestigious event," Mrs. Chen said carefully. "These are important people who expect the best if something goes wrong." "I know," Maya interrupted gently. "I know it's a risk, but what if it goes right? What if I can give them the music they were expecting?" Mrs. Chen looked around the ballroom, taking in the disappointed faces of the guests and the empty piano that sat like a beautiful but useless decoration. The evening was already damaged by the absence of music. How much worse could it really get? "Have you ever performed for an audience this size?" Mrs. Chen asked. Maya thought back to her recitals and competitions. "I've played for a few hundred people before, yes. Not in a setting like this, but I know how to handle an audience." The two women stood in silence for a moment, both understanding the weight of this decision. If Maya succeeded, it could save the evening and maybe even make it more special than anyone had planned. If she failed, it could be embarrassing for everyone involved, and Maya would probably lose her job. Mrs. Chen finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "If I let you do this and it doesn't go well, I can't protect your position here. You understand that, right?" Maya nodded, surprised by how calm she felt now that she had made the decision. "I understand. But Mrs. Chen, I really think I can do this. I know I can." Her supervisor looked at her for another long moment, then slowly nodded. "All right, Maya. Let's see what you can do. But first, let me clear it with Mr. Davidson." Mr. Davidson was the hotel manager, and his approval would be needed for such an unusual arrangement. Maya watched as Mrs. Chen walked across the room to where he was standing near the bar, speaking in urgent whispers and gesturing toward both Maya and the piano. Maya's future hung in the balance of that conversation, but she was no longer afraid. For the first time in years, she felt completely sure about something. She was meant to play that piano tonight. Maya watched Mr. Davidson's face as Mrs. Chen explained the situation to him. The hotel manager was a tall man in his 50s who took pride in running one of the city's most respected venues. His expression shifted from confusion to concern as he glanced between Maya and the silent piano. After what felt like the longest 5 minutes of Maya's life, both Mrs. Chen and Mr. Davidson walked back toward her. Maya could not read their faces, and her stomach was doing nervous flips as they approached. "Maya," Mr. Davidson said quietly, "Mrs. Chen tells me you have musical training. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir," Maya replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I studied piano for 12 years and performed regularly until I was 18. Mr. Davidson nodded slowly. And you feel confident you could perform for our guest tonight? Maya thought about lying, about saying she was completely confident and had no doubts at all, but something told her that honesty would serve her better in this moment. I'm nervous, she admitted. It's been a few years since I've played for an audience, but I know I can do this. I can feel it. The hotel manager studied her face for a moment, then looked around the ballroom at their disappointed guests. Maya could see him weighing the risks in his mind. The safe choice would be to skip the music entirely and hope the guests did not complain too much. The bold choice was to trust a waitress who claimed she could save their evening. All right, Mr. Davidson finally said. We'll give you a chance. But Maya, you need to understand that this is highly unusual. If this doesn't work out— I know, sir, Maya interrupted gently. I'm willing to take that risk. Mrs. Chen stepped closer and lowered her voice. What will you play? Do you need sheet music? Maya shook her head. I have plenty of pieces memorized. I'll start with something classical that won't be too surprising, then maybe add some variety if people seem to be enjoying it. How long can you play? Mr. Davidson asked. As long as you need me to, Maya answered honestly. I know enough pieces to fill several hours if necessary. Mr. Davidson nodded and looked at his watch. The main course will be served in about 15 minutes. If you're going to do this now would be the perfect time to start. Maya felt her heart rate pick up again. This was really happening. After years of serving other people while her musical dreams collected dust, she was about to sit at a beautiful piano in front of 300 wealthy strangers and play music again. Should I make an announcement? Mrs. Chen asked. Maya thought about it for a moment. Maybe just something simple. You don't need to make a big deal about who I am or anything like that. Mrs. Chen nodded and walked toward the microphone while Maya stood frozen next to the piano. She realized she was still wearing her server's apron, and her hands were slightly sticky from carrying drink trays all evening. This was not exactly how she had always imagined making her comeback to the piano. Maya quickly untied her apron and handed it to Mr. Davidson, who seemed surprised to suddenly be holding it. She wiped her hands on her uniform pants and tried to smooth down any stray hairs that had escaped from her ponytail. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Chen's voice came through the sound system. We have a wonderful surprise for you this evening. One of our staff members is actually a trained pianist, and she has graciously offered to provide music for the remainder of your dinner. Maya heard a few interested murmurs from the crowd, but she could also sense skepticism in the air. These people had been expecting a professional musician, not someone who worked as their server. She could not blame them for having doubts. Please welcome Maya Rodriguez, Mrs. Chen continued, gesturing toward the piano. Maya took a deep breath and walked across the ballroom floor. Every step felt like it took forever, and she was aware of hundreds of eyes following her movement. Some guests looked curious, others appeared doubtful, and a few seemed annoyed that their waitress was abandoning her duties to play dress-up as a musician. When Maya reached the piano bench, she paused for just a moment to run her fingers along the edge of the keyboard. The keys were perfectly clean and properly tuned, just waiting for someone to bring them to life. She had dreamed of playing an instrument this beautiful, but had never imagined it would happen while wearing her work uniform in front of people. She had been serving drinks to just minutes earlier. Maya sat down and adjusted the bench to the right height. She placed her hands in her lap and closed her eyes for just a second, trying to center herself the way her old teacher had taught her to do before every performance. When she opened her eyes and looked out at the audience, she saw 300 faces staring back at her with varying degrees of curiosity and doubt. At table 14, the two women who had been discussing the missing pianist were leaning forward with interest. At table 16, a man in an expensive suit was checking his phone, clearly not expecting much from this unexpected entertainment. Maya placed her hands on the keys and felt the familiar coolness of the ivory beneath her fingertips. For just a moment, all the noise in her head went quiet. All the worry about bills and rent and Sophia's school shoes faded away. All the fear about whether she was making a terrible mistake disappeared. In that moment, Maya was not a struggling single mother or an overworked waitress. She was a musician, sitting at a beautiful instrument, about to share something magical with a room full of people who had no idea what they were about to experience. She took one more deep breath and began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor filled the ballroom, clear and precise and hauntingly beautiful. Maya felt her muscle memory take over as her fingers found their way around the keyboard, with the confidence of someone who had spent thousands of hours practicing this exact piece. The room fell completely silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, forks paused halfway to mouths, and even the servers in the back of the room stopped moving to listen. The only sound in the entire ballroom was the music flowing from Maya's hands. Maya could feel the shift in the room's energy as the first few measures progressed. The skeptical expressions on people's faces were changing to surprise, then amazement. This was not what anyone had expected from their waitress, and Maya could sense their shock as they realized they were hearing something truly special. But Maya was no longer thinking about the audience or their reactions. She was lost in the music, remembering why she had fallen in love with the piano in the first place. Each note felt like coming home after a long journey, and she knew without any doubt that this was where she belonged. As Maya continued playing the Chopin piece, something magical began happening in the ballroom. The wealthy guests who had been skeptical just moments before were now completely captivated. At table 12, an elderly woman had tears forming in her eyes as she listened to the haunting melody. Her husband, a retired businessman who had heard countless professional performances over the years, was shaking his head in amazement. Maya's fingers moved across the keys with a grace that seemed almost impossible. Every note was perfect, every phrase shaped with the kind of musical understanding that cannot be taught in any classroom. This was not just technical skill, though her technique was flawless. This was pure emotion being translated into sound, and everyone in the room could feel it. The servers who had been moving between tables with dinner plates had stopped working entirely. They stood along the walls of the ballroom, watching their colleague transform before their eyes. Carlos, who worked in the kitchen and had known Maya for 2 years, could hardly believe what he was seeing. He had never suspected that the quiet waitress who always ate her lunch alone had this incredible gift hidden inside her. At table 16, the businessman who had been checking his phone earlier was now staring at Maya with his mouth slightly open. He had season tickets to the symphony and prided himself on recognizing true talent when he heard it. What Maya was playing was not just good, it was extraordinary. He pulled out his phone again, but this time it was to start recording. Mrs. Chen stood near the kitchen doors, feeling a mixture of pride and disbelief. In all her years of managing events, she had never experienced anything quite like this. She had taken a huge risk by allowing Maya to play, and it was turning out to be one of the best decisions she had ever made. Maya reached the most challenging section of the Chopin piece, where the melody becomes fast and intricate, requiring both hands to work independently while maintaining perfect timing. She had practiced this part hundreds of times as a teenager, and her fingers remembered every single note. The music flowed from her hands like water, each phrase building on the last to create something breathtakingly beautiful. A woman at table 18 whispered to her husband, "Who is this girl? She plays like she studied at Juilliard." Her husband, who owned several art galleries and knew quality when he saw it, nodded in agreement. "This is concert-level playing," he whispered back. "I've never heard anything like this outside of a major concert hall." As Maya brought the Chopin piece to its dramatic conclusion, the entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. The final notes hung in the air for a moment before fading into complete silence. Then, without any hesitation, the entire room erupted in applause. But this was not polite charity gala applause. This was the kind of thunderous, enthusiastic applause usually reserved for world-class performers at the most prestigious venues. People were not just clapping, they were standing up from their chairs, shouting "Bravo!" and looking at each other with expressions of pure amazement. Maya felt overwhelmed by the response. She had hoped people would enjoy her playing, but she had not expected anything like this. The applause went on for what felt like forever, and Maya found herself fighting back tears as she realized that all those years of practice had not been wasted after all. When the applause finally died down, Maya knew she could not stop with just one piece. The audience was completely with her now, and she could feel their hunger for more music. She decided to shift gears and play something completely different. "This next piece is Debussy's Clair de Lune," Maya said softly into the quiet room. Her voice was barely loud enough to carry, but in the perfect acoustics of the ballroom, everyone could hear her clearly. The opening notes of Clair de Lune were like liquid moonlight flowing through the room. Where the Chopin had been dramatic and powerful, this piece was gentle and dreamy. Maya's touch on the keys was so delicate that each note seemed to float through the air before settling into the listeners' hearts. An older gentleman at table 15 found himself thinking about his late wife, who had loved this particular piece. They had danced to it at their wedding 43 years ago, and hearing it played with such sensitivity brought back memories so vivid he could almost see her face again. He was not the only person in the room experiencing powerful emotions as Maya's music touched something deep inside them. The hotel's general manager, Mr. Davidson, was standing near the bar with his arms crossed, watching this unprecedented situation unfold. He had been in the hospitality business for over 20 years, and he had never seen anything transform an event quite like this. The energy in the room was electric, and he could see that his guests were having an experience they would never forget. Maya finished Clair de Lune and immediately transitioned into something that surprised everyone. She began playing a jazz version of a popular song that most people in the room would recognize. Her arrangement was sophisticated and creative, showing yet another side of her musical abilities. The jazz piece had a completely different energy than the classical music she had been playing. It was playful and spontaneous, with Maya improvising sections that made each phrase unique. Some of the younger guests began moving slightly in their chairs, caught up in the infectious rhythm of her playing. A prominent music teacher named Professor Williams, who was attending the gala as a donor, was studying Maya's technique with professional interest. He could see that she had received excellent classical training, but her jazz playing showed a natural musicality that could not be taught. This young woman was the kind of student he encountered maybe once in a decade, if he was lucky. Maya could feel the room's energy shifting with each piece she played. The audience was no longer just politely listening. They were completely engaged with her music. She could see people leaning forward in their chairs, some with their eyes closed as they absorbed every note, others watching her hands move across the keys with fascination. As she finished the jazz piece, Maya made a spontaneous decision. She was going to play one more song, something that would bring together everything she had learned over the years and show these people the full range of what music could do. The piece she chose was one of her own arrangements, a combination of classical and contemporary styles that she had worked on as a teenager, but had never performed for anyone. It was risky to play something so personal, but Maya felt like this entire evening had been about taking risks. As the first notes of her original arrangement filled the ballroom, Maya realized that she was no longer playing for tips or job security, or even to save the evening's entertainment. She was playing because this was who she really was, and for the first time in years, she was allowing herself to be completely authentic. The room was absolutely silent, except for her music, and Maya knew that she was creating a moment that none of these people would ever forget. When Maya played the final note of her personal arrangement, the silence that followed was different from before. It was not just quiet, it was reverent. 300 people sat in complete stillness, as if they were afraid that moving or breathing might somehow break the spell that Maya had cast over the entire room. Then someone started clapping. It began as a single pair of hands, then two, then suddenly the entire ballroom exploded into the loudest applause Maya had ever heard in her life. But this time, people were not just standing and clapping. They were cheering, whistling, and calling out words of appreciation that echoed off the crystal chandeliers above. Maya sat at the piano bench, overwhelmed by the response. Her hands were shaking slightly as she looked out at the sea of faces, all beaming with joy and amazement. Several people were wiping tears from their eyes, and others were still shaking their heads in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. The applause continued for what felt like several minutes. Maya stood up from the piano bench and gave a small, graceful bow, the way her old teacher had taught her to do after performances. The crowd's enthusiasm only grew louder. As the applause finally began to die down, Maya noticed a distinguished older woman making her way through the tables toward the piano. She was elegantly dressed in a navy blue gown and moved with the kind of confidence that suggested she was used to being the most important person in any room. The woman approached Maya with a warm smile and extended her hand. "My dear, that was absolutely extraordinary. I'm Victoria Sterling, and I sit on the board of the City Symphony Orchestra." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of Victoria Sterling. Everyone in the local music community knew her name. She was one of the most influential arts patrons in the city, and her support could make or break a musician's career. "Mrs. Sterling," Maya said, trying not to let her voice shake, "it's an honor to meet you." "The honor is entirely mine," Victoria replied. "In 40 years of attending concerts and supporting young musicians, I have rarely heard anything as moving as what you just played. Tell me, where did you study?" Maya felt a familiar pang of sadness as she explained her background. "I studied locally until I was 18. I had a scholarship opportunity to continue, but I wasn't able to take it." Victoria's expression softened, with understanding. "Life circumstances, I assume?" Maya nodded. "I had to work to support my family, and then I had my daughter. Music became something I could only dream about." "Well, my dear," Victoria said, her eyes sparkling with determination, "I think it's time to turn those dreams back into reality. I would like to offer you a full scholarship to complete your musical education at the conservatory, and once you've finished your studies, I can personally guarantee you an audition with our symphony orchestra." Maya felt the world spin around her. She gripped the piano for support, hardly able to believe what she was hearing. "Mrs. Sterling, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Victoria laughed gently. "The music world needs artists like you. What we heard tonight was not just technical skill, it was pure heart and soul. That cannot be taught." Before Maya could respond, another voice joined the conversation. It was the evening's host, Dr. Richard Hamilton, who had organized the entire charity gala. He was a successful surgeon who had been watching Maya's performance with growing excitement. "Excuse me, ladies," Dr. Hamilton said as he approached. "I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I had to come over and tell you, young lady, that your performance tonight has been the highlight of this entire event." Maya smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. That means so much to me." "Actually," Dr. Hamilton continued, "I'd like to do something special. I know this is unusual, but I'm going to take a moment to address our guests about what we've just experienced." Dr. Hamilton walked to the microphone and waited for the room to quiet down. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can all agree that we have just witnessed something truly remarkable tonight." The crowd murmured in agreement, and Maya felt her face turning red as she realized all attention was on her again. "This talented young woman," Dr. Hamilton continued, "has given us a gift tonight. She stepped up when we needed her most and provided us with an evening of music that I know none of us will ever forget." More applause filled the room, and Maya noticed people taking out their phones to record Dr. Hamilton's speech. "But here's what makes this even more special," Dr. Hamilton went on. "Maya is not a professional musician. She's a hardworking single mother who has been serving our tables tonight while harboring this incredible talent. Her story reminds us that extraordinary gifts can be found in the most unexpected places." Maya felt tears starting to form in her eyes as she listened to Dr. Hamilton speak about her life with such respect and admiration. "So I'm going to do something spontaneous," Dr. Hamilton announced. "I'm starting a collection right here, right now, to help Maya pursue her musical dreams. Whatever we raise tonight will go toward her education and supporting her family while she studies." Maya could hardly believe what was happening. Dr. Hamilton was asking 300 wealthy people to donate money to help her return to music. She wanted to protest, to say it was too much, but Victoria Sterling placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Let them do this," Victoria whispered. "They want to be part of your story." What happened next was like something from a movie. People began approaching the front of the room with checks, cash, and pledges. The hotel staff brought out a large basket to collect the donations, and Maya watched in amazement as it quickly filled up. A prominent businessman wrote a check for $5,000. A retired teacher donated $200 in cash, saying that Maya reminded her why she had loved working with young people. A couple who owned several restaurants pledged to provide Maya's family with free meals for a year so she could focus on her studies. The basket kept filling, and Dr. Hamilton kept a running tally of the donations. $5,000 then, $10,000, then $15,000. Maya felt like she was dreaming as the numbers climbed higher and higher. When the collecting was finally finished, Dr. Hamilton announced the total. "Ladies and gentlemen, together we have raised $28,500 for Maya's musical education." The room erupted in applause once again, and Maya could no longer hold back her tears. Mrs. Chen appeared beside her with a box of tissues, smiling proudly at her employee who had become the star of the evening. As the formal program concluded and guests began to mingle again, Maya found herself surrounded by people who wanted to congratulate her and learn more about her story. Several offered her business cards, promising connections and opportunities she had never imagined possible. But the moment that meant the most to Maya came when she stepped outside to call her daughter. Sophia answered on the second ring, excited to hear from her mother. "Mama, how was work tonight?" Sophia asked. Maya looked back at the glowing ballroom through the hotel's windows, thinking about everything that had changed in just a few short hours. "Sophia, baby," Maya said, her voice full of joy and hope. "I think our whole life is about to change."